All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me again. This is episode 13. It is January 20th, a Tuesday. And sorry I'm a little later than usual. I forgot to make tea, so I just ran around to get stuff to make tea. Yeah. So, one second. And yeah, today's stream is kind of self-explanatory with the title Reversing Brain Rot. I well, I'll wait till I'm done, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so basically I'm kind of just pitching myself a softball again, and then I'll have this week off to think about some more prep and do some actual writing. And but I think this is highly relevant. It's just something that's sort of easy to talk about because I've spent so long thinking about ways to enrich the capabilities of my mind or strengthen my mind instead of atrophy it, because I spent a lot of my 20s in a deep depression. And when you're depressed, your brain is like, it feels like your brain is like trimming itself and like closing itself off, and things are less and less available to you, and less, you're increasingly less aware of all kinds of things. Yeah, apologies. Also, I need to get used to, I'm wearing my like sound canceling headphones again, so my voice is just totally unusual, but my neighbors are being kind of loud, so it is what it is. And this is prompted by, like, I've been reflecting recently because now, like, for years really, my project, like the project that has turned into this, felt really nebulous and difficult to it was difficult to create a structure for working on this kind of stuff, because it mostly existed in conversations with people and in my head and in my reading and in reading things with other people and in my experiences. Just it was difficult to, and I've never been a writer, so it kind of took a long time to get to the point where I could finally produce writing, and then it proved difficult to get through all of... Oh, hang on a sec. Sorry, it looked like I was being way too loud for a second. Anyway, yeah, it's something I've been thinking about, because now I do have an obvious outlet for this information, and I am still struggling with certain disciplinary issues, I guess. And one thing that keeps rising to the top is I'm shocked by how addictive the phone actually is. It is unbelievable how much it makes you want to use it, or at least how much it makes me want to use it. I guess I can only speak for myself, but it's also just unbelievable to go out in the world and see so many people on it all the time, whether they're driving cars or on public transit or walking down the street or sitting or at a restaurant or whatever it is. Like, it is just increasingly kind of unbelievable to me how pervasive it is, in spite of how damaging it is understood to be. Like, people understand, on some level, people understand that it is addictive, that it is making them want to do things that are not really the things that they believe they want to do with their life. Like, it's a time wasting machine. And I don't know. It's just a, like, I spend so much time analyzing this as a sociological phenomena, and also trying to understand my own drives and motivations, and like doing like a sort of depth psychology on myself. And despite that, like, I'm ashamed of how much time I spend on phones and laptops wasting my time. So I think it is just going to be relevant. If for no one else, it's probably relevant for me to go over some of this stuff off the top of my head, where it's like there are just so many other things you can do that are actually good for the health of your mind, good for the health of your soul, good for creativity, good for your social capabilities, for interacting with other people, just good all around. Sort of like that Taoist verse about, like, you have to cultivate this in yourself, and then it abounds. It just starts to abound in the other areas, in your family, in your social group, in your community. But it requires people to actually take time and discipline themselves and practice an anti-brain rot to bring about that virtue. Like, you have to say no to the brain rot and actually distance yourself from it, while also honing, like doing positive activities. There's a negative and a positive aspect. The negative aspect is that you cut off all of these things that are fucking with you, such as, like, I don't know, like fasting from the phone or something, like saying at least like one day a week my phone's going to be off all day. Like, that's a negative. You're taking something away. But then there's also positive things we have to do, and that's really what this stream is going to be about, because I've talked a bit on the show about some of the things we can distance ourselves from and take away, put distance between ourselves and those things. But I haven't talked a whole lot about positive techniques or strategies, and that's what the show will be about today. Because I think some people I think we can all use reminders that that there's other things to do with our time and energy. And it's a tactical thing, and it's a strategic thing, because there's little things you can do. There's little things to remember that you can do, such as, like, I don't know, I'll talk about some concentration exercises, some writing exercises, some other activities, also like bodily activities, certain exercises, like physical exercises. And sorry, I'm getting a little screwed up because of just the way that I sound to myself with the headphones in. So I still have to get used to that. It's kind of making me lose my train of thought over and over, or more frequently than usual. But yeah, I think I was just saying, like, I think we can all be reminded, we could all benefit from being reminded of the things we can do with our time and energy that are actually good for us. And, oh yeah, so there's like tactical little things, but there's also overall strategic thinking about this, where it's like, for example, something I have to remind myself all the time is, like, I need to work in order to want to work. I'm not going to just want to work. I have to overcome the initial inertia and then start doing the thing, and then I will just want to do more of it, because I will understand, I'll be in a new frame, a new existential frame of mind by doing that task, whether it's doing chores, or whether it's doing a writing thing that I ought to be doing, or whether it's cleaning my room, washing the dishes, or calling someone. It really varies, or exercising, going for a run, whatever it may be, changing my oil, whatever, all kinds of things. Like, the inertia, you don't want, I think the way most of our lives are set up, like, we don't want to do a lot of those things. And I think part of the issue with that is how rewarding the anticipation of using the phone becomes to us, because I think the way dopamine works is heavily anticipation oriented. It's like, you just think it's going to be highly pleasurable, and so that it sort of pre-pleasures you into then going through the act of opening up the phone and checking whatever it is that you want, or that part of you wants. So yeah, so I guess I'll just get into it. Yeah, inertia really is so much. Like, a lot of what I'm trying to do in my own life is find a way to have things set up such that that inertia is sort of overcome by default, and I I know what I need to say to myself in the morning to get out of bed and start working on something. And one of those things, for example, is like, if I can remind myself, like I have a whiteboard in my room, and sometimes I'll write messages or things that I need to do the next day on it before I go to bed, so that when I wake up, I might look at it and not just go back to bed. And it might motivate me to get out of bed. And one of the things that I think sometimes is actually quite helpful to see in the morning is just a reminder that I like being awake so much more than I like being asleep. In that moment, when I'm, and so I have an issue with waking up. I feel like I'm on like opium or something when I wake up. I'm just like, I just want to go back to bed more than like literally anything. It just feels so good to go back to bed. And so I need that I need that reminder that like actually being awake is better than this. And in that moment, you're like, well, obviously nothing is better than this. But if you can actually like wrap your intellect around that for a second, you'll be like, oh, yeah, like that's a message for me when I was awake. And like, I don't know, you can fight with it because different states of mind really feel quite different to oneself. Um, and so it's hard to argue across frames of mind. Like it's hard to have the groggy self argue with the awake self, because when you're groggy, you're just right about everything, and when you're awake, you're right about everything to yourself. So there's issues with that, but sometimes it works to just like get that reminder, get that like glimmer in your brain for a second that like, oh yeah, actually I like being awake, because that's where I live my entire life, is when I'm awake and not when I'm in bed. And actually I don't really like, when I'm awake, I don't give a shit about sleep. Like I wish I could actually just sleep a lot less so that I could be awake more. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, so that kind of relates to like another, on the strategic side, like another thing that I do for myself sometimes is like try to separate what my soul wants from what my body wants, and try to like tame or discipline my body like an animal or something, where it's like, if I know that I want to take a cold shower because it is obviously good for my brain, like when I do it, it is like, it changes the things that I think. It really livens my mind up. But I don't like doing it. It's kind of painful to do. But if I'm able to separate what my soul wants from what my body wants, I can just be like, I can just force myself to get in the shower, because I recognize like, oh, this actually isn't this is not gonna hurt my body. It's probably actually gonna make my body feel better afterwards. So there's no danger, there's no downside. The dread of the body is all illegitimate, and it makes it so easy to put your body in its place when that's the case, and be like, no, we're getting in the cold shower. I've not really been doing that this winter, though. It's pretty hard to do in the winter, but I should. So maybe I'll be able to motivate myself through this stream. But yeah. Oh yeah, I feel similarly. Or my friend in the chat's talking about like creating, uh, like a they had like a map on the wall of all these pages that were sort of like a map of trying to get through this complex task. And yeah, I think it really helps to do things like that. Like I'll have a lot to say about writing in here specifically, um, but I'll check the other stuff you're saying in a bit. This tea is so hot. Okay, so all right, yeah, I'll start. I'll keep going through these kind of like guiding strategic principles, like long war principles, as opposed to these little things you can do. Maybe you'll do some of them every day. Maybe you'll do them just every once in a while. But that's the difference between when I say tactical versus strategic. Tactical is about like sort of getting out of a scenario. Or on the stream yesterday, I talked about techniques for getting out of like depression holes, or holes in general in your life where you feel like you've fallen down and are struggling to move forward. Sometimes tactics can be very helpful for that. All right. So another guiding principle to keep in mind relates to brain plasticity, and it is like your brain is adapting to survive. It has certain mechanisms that it's developed evolutionarily to survive in the world. And those mechanisms are being totally manipulated by the media and technology infrastructure of our global society, and they are damaging your soul, really. They're damaging your brain. They're closing you off to the world and closing you off to yourself. They're closing you off to other people by molding you in certain ways. So, like, I'll give an example. Like, think evolutionarily about this a little bit, about what you're learning is good about life because it keeps you alive. So food is extremely tied to this, sex is extremely tied to this. And so with the food example, if your life is set up as, if your life revolves around going to work and you use your phone throughout the day, and going to work ultimately provides you a paycheck every 2 weeks, which is a really rewarding thing to receive. And then the money you've accumulated through these paychecks over time is how you go to the grocery store or the restaurants to have these very satisfying food experiences where you are literally kept alive. Your brain is learning, oh, to stay alive and have these pleasurable food experiences where I can continue my existence and bring energy to my body, bring material into my body to continue to sustain it. Oh, well, if this is all I have to do that, I should get really good at this because there's a causal relation here where by living my work life and living my social media life, that ultimately is that's helping me get my food. It's helping me live. You adapt onto that. And that's at the expense of other things that your brain could be learning to reward itself with. So you kind of have to, even though that is just going to be most of our lives, you have to sidestep it and make sure that your brain is not believing that like that's the meaning of life, because it will be adapting itself to whatever it thinks the meaning of life is. Like I know I'm being like kind of ham-fisted with my terminology here, but I'm just trying to get like a point across that I think a lot of people are living. So I think it's okay that I'm not being super articulate. But so we need to find ways to adapt our brain toward enriching itself and toward life itself in spite of what you have to do to survive, in spite of needing to work, needing to engage in superficial or negative relationships, or having a sustenance receiving process that is really alienating. Like you don't know where the food comes from. It's abstract. You need to do this unrelated task, and then you're given the paycheck, and then you allocate some of the paycheck to get your food, as opposed to, for by far most of human history, you had some awareness of where the food was coming from, and it was a little less abstract how your labor was relating to where that food came from and how it got to you. Now it is highly removed. And because it gets so highly removed, your brain is able to separate all these things purely. Like it doesn't need to be associating those things. Like it doesn't need to be associating food or work with life or with experience, because those things are set aside and the experiences are sort of alienated in and of themselves, but especially from each other. All right. So, yeah, on that note, we need to think about our instrument of attention within our being and repairing that instrument, learning to use that instrument so that we can concentrate, so that we can remain collected, so that we can have a functional and, I mean, at the very least, a functional memory and associativity, and to develop a strong sense of awareness of what's going on in the world, awareness of what's going on in our lives, awareness of what's going on in our bodies, sensory awareness, conceptual sociological awareness. All right. So from here on out, I'm basically just going to talk about like a whole bunch of random tactics that I like to do and that I don't do nearly enough, but that I think are helpful. Sorry, the when I hold the mug in front of my mouth, it blocks the audio. But yeah, just going to talk about a whole bunch of random tactics like that I wrote off the top of my head earlier. It's not super organized, certainly not complete. And yeah, they're just things that I don't do enough and that I think we could all use a little bit more of, because it is, like I titled the video, reversing brain rot or something, because doom scrolling and all of this stuff, it's called brain rot for a reason. It's rotting your brain. It's making you stupid. It's making you into a slave. It's making you into a cop in certain ways, because the dumber you are, the more manipulable you are, and then you become this sort of inertial shield for the protection of the society while believing you're actually even against certain elements of the society. So, yeah. So it's bad news. And we need to reverse it. We need to actually grow. We need to grow our brain. Like we need we need some neurogenesis. We need to learn new things. We need to do new things. So I'll get into it, and I'm going to start here with yeah, I guess I'll start with just start with writing. I don't know how much people write. I don't really consider writing text messages or DMs to be writing. But yeah, so I think writing can be very helpful for understanding who we are and understanding what we actually think. I think it is indispensable to be writing in the circumstances that we live in. I think it can bring a lot of stability into your life. I think it can make things a lot less chaotic, a lot less confusing, because you're just creating meaning, you're creating structure out of this, kind of ambiguous, conscious being that you are. And so I've brought this up to some friends in the past, and some people have a lot of difficulty with writing. Even if they think they really want to do it, it is a difficult hurdle to actually overcome. So if you're one of those people, I think it can be helpful to... There's a few different strategies. Okay, so one of the strategies is just to take it a day at a time, in a sense. Like just write the things that happened to you that day. Because I think the reason some people have difficulty writing is a sort of self-consciousness. It's a sort of, because, I mean, like if you're writing this by hand or on a computer, someone else can read it someday. Like you are there's a vulnerable quality to it. Like you're putting part of yourself out there and it can be read. So you wind up like weighing inside, like, what do I really say here? Like, do I say literally what I think? And I think there's an embarrassment about... I think people feel embarrassed sharing what they actually literally think in their mind. I mean, I'm not going to like pick up my diary and read from it. Like I have that on some level. I don't want to just put... I don't know. You want to present yourself differently. You want to present yourself socially differently to different people. Like there's a social presentation, and writing is separate from that. And I think maybe that's why it's hard for people. You have what's in your mind, you have what's social, and then you kind of need to like take something out of your mind, which you normally only ever do in a social context, like talking to people, but you need to do it alone. And some people, that's just a difficult thing to overcome. So I think something that has proved helpful for some of my friends is just like write down what happens to you over the course of the day, because that's neutral, and you don't have to be afraid of somebody reading that, because it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. It's just like there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Maybe you phrase something a little strange, I guess, but the stakes are so low. And what happens when you actually do that is typically you start to associate. You start to have a whole lot more to say than you think you are going into it. Like maybe you think, oh, I have nothing to write about, and so I'll just do this day exercise. I like 90% of the time you are going to find something to say in there. You're going to go off on a tangent. It just that's just what that's just what happens with the mind. So yeah, I don't know. So I recommend writing, and if you can get over the hump, and if you are open to putting words on paper, another thing that I find quite helpful is free writing. And there are different ways you can free write. There's different ways you could do like a stream of consciousness writing. And one that I think is helpful is to set a timer, whether it's 5 or 10 minutes or 30 minutes. I mean, that would be kind of a lot for this specific exercise, but just set a timer. And until that timer goes off, the rule is you can't stop writing. So you can't go back and correct anything. You just have to, like, it doesn't have to be readable at the end. It doesn't have to be coherent or organized. The point is just to write. It's just to start practicing going from having thoughts in your mind to putting them on the page. It's sort of a mechanical exercise. I think the value of it is sort of mechanical, because when you're thinking about what you're writing, you can get hung up in that process, and you maybe don't actually practice so much the actual mind to body to page connection. So this is a way to skip all the thinking and just like grind, basically grind on that like straight from mind to paper connection for some amount of time. And that is valuable. Like the text that comes out of it, you might just throw it away. But just to like be turning those gears and getting the rust off in that area, I think is valuable. And that's a way I think about a lot of these mental exercises or physical exercises, just all these exercises that have benefits to our brain, like our neural capabilities. Like, sorry, I'm just my throat's just like super dry. But yeah, that's one way I think about that, is just there's so much unexplored territory in our mind, or underutilized potential of our mind, and it's just about like walking around and knocking the cobwebs off everywhere that you can reach. Like just trying to get into areas where it's like, oh, I don't do that. I like never do that. And you expose yourself to that. That could even just be going into a different location. Like last week I talked about going to that classical music concert, and I was like, oh, I'm never in this environment anymore. And it's that is an area of your mind being lit up that is not typically lit up. It just is that real. It's not, I don't know. The mind is just pretty deep. And another example of something like that is, like, we all have a dominant hand for the most part. Some people are totally ambidextrous, I guess. But another thing I'll do sometimes is write with my left hand. And I started doing this because I'm a drummer, and I just wanted to develop develop my capabilities with this hand. Like there's a range of motion. I'm right-handed, so with my right hand, there's a whole lot more sensitivity. There's a whole lot more I can do with it and sense with it when I am holding a stick and drumming or playing the bass or something like that. They don't have the same things going on, because I'll write with this hand. I'll do different, like drumming is not typically a symmetrical endeavor. It's drumming on a drum set is asymmetrical. So your right hand gets used to one thing, your left hand, same with the right foot and the left foot. So I liked for I don't know, I mean, I still do it periodically, but for a year I was writing quite a bit with my left hand, and now I can write comfortably. It's a mess, but like I can write with my left hand if I really need to. And that just, like I'm saying, it just lights up a different part of the brain. You're walking around and the potential space of your brain and you're knocking the cobwebs off. You're like turning these gears that haven't been turned maybe ever. You're maybe even creating new gears. You're creating new machinery out in the back. You're creating like new additions on the cognitive factory. Yeah. Anyway, so that's just something I keep in mind with all of this. It's like just wake the brain up. You really have to wake the brain up because everything is telling you to go to bed. Everything's telling you to just turn it off, pack it up, forget about it, like do the most baseline retarded shit you can do and just waste your whole life. That's the message that I get from the world a whole lot of the time. So, or that I see other people getting as well. Like it doesn't feel super personal. It feels like that's like what's expected of people. I mean, there's so many, like one, a decent rule of thumb for judging a society too is just like how homeless people are treated. And it's like, yeah, they're on some level, like what is going on here does not care about people. It does not care about the wellness of people. So everyone's just fucking, pardon my language, but they literally are rotting their brain. And we are all going to face the consequences of that in the future. All right. So some other writing exercises. I think it can be helpful to ask yourself hard questions about what you like actually believe, or like, I don't know. I mean, like it could be huge questions like, why do I believe in God, or why do I not believe in God? And just trying to like create some sort of logical exploration of that on paper. There's all kinds of stuff like that. Like I'm not going to give lists of writing prompts in here. I may in the future. I have a friend who made a lot of them that are really good, and it would be nice to share them. But yeah, another time we'll get deeper into that. I'm just trying to cover a whole lot of types of activities. So I think another great one could be writing letters that are not to be sent, or writing letters that are to be sent. But I think most of us have people in our lives where there's things that we would like to say to them that we don't know how to say yet. And a great way to practice that is to just write. Just like nobody has to see it, but just like if there's people you've cut off in your life that you think you might eventually want to talk to, but you just don't know how to do it, a great way to do that is just get in your journal and be like, okay, thought experiment time. I'm in the room with this person. What do I say with them? Or like, I have this person's undivided attention, or literally like, I'm just going to write this person a letter. Like, what do I say? What do I put in the letter? You have to make the drafts if you're ever actually going to send it. So yeah, all kinds of prompts. It's all great. Oh, another one is just transcribing things. I think it's, so by transcribing, I mean just like taking something you like in a book, or I mean if you're really fucked up, because like I used to be depressed. I get just feeling like you can't do anything, and like you don't even feel like you need to search for something you like. It's like just pick up a random book, pick up a random page, write it out, just write until you can't write anymore, and then go to bed. Like that's better than going on your phone. That just pretty much 100% of the time. So, however, if you if you do have a little bit more agency in your life, find certain things that really resonate with you, that invigorate you or inspire you, and that you want to remember, and write those things down. Like there's a job that I've done over the years periodically, like every few months, where there's a lot of downtime, and at that job I would just, well, not in the beginning, but eventually what it has turned into is I would spend a lot of time at that job just writing things down that I liked. And it was a time where I was reading a lot of the Quran, so I write down lots of Quran verses or Tao Te Ching verses. But sometimes I would also I'd be reading like a theory book, or like I remember doing this with The Administration of Fear by Paul Virilio. I wrote out just pages of Paul Virilio because I was like, I'm just sitting here and I'm just being paid to sit here. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go on my phone. I would often take those weeks. Actually, it would just be a job for a week. And I would try to turn my phone off and leave it off for the whole week, and then just do all this other shit. I would think of it as sort of I don't know, like a dopamine reset, dopamine fast, just like a an attempt to like just throw all that off and try to try to heal a little bit. And on that note, I like I like I keep a notebook. Like, I haven't actually added to this in a long time, and like, I started it a few years ago deliberately as like, okay, this is going to be a notebook of things that I write down from other places that I like and that I want to remember, and I could draw from this if I ever want to just like by rote write something down over and over and over until I remember it, or for no reason, just to have it be more in my mind. Because if you read something and like it, it's going to pass away unless you make an effort to let it sit in your mind, let it stay in your mind, let it stay with you and become a part of you. And that requires writing it down a few times at least, reading it a few times at least, read it out loud, read it backwards, all kinds of things. So I think it's nice to have a dedicated notebook where you can be like, oh, I really like that thing someone said, or thing that I saw somewhere, or thing that I read somewhere. I'm going to write it down and have it in here, so when I feel bad, I can look through this notebook, and maybe all of it will feel very dull to me until that one that I find that is actually inspiring still to me. That's a great thing to have around. All right. I guess from there I'll talk about, oh yeah, you should hit up Alina for some writing prompts, and I will maybe, yeah, I was thinking when I was preparing this talk that in the future it would be fun to talk about those. So anyway, so yeah, from there I'll just talk about reading. So I mean, I really recommend that book that I've talked about on here once or twice. How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. It's great and talks about the complexity of reading and how, because I think people have a tendency to think it's a pretty simple thing where it's like, okay, yeah, I know how to sound out the words, I know what the words mean, and thus I'm reading them off of the page. I hear them in my head, I'm reading them. But there's so much complexity, because think about how much complexity can go into writing something, or human experience in general. Literally everything that we know about every human experience in the world has occurred within one single mind. The mind has so much potential for experience, and some of that really relies on the environment, but some of it can just be generated from within the mind. So I don't know, that, I mean, kind of dark, but the first few things I think about are being tortured in a prison, like in war or something, or being tortured in an MK Ultra experiment where you're on psychedelics, and or as a result of an MK Ultra experiment. Just like an extra dimensional torture versus actual torture. There's sort of like, there's things that the mind brings to bear, or the chemical that you've taken brings to bear in the mind, versus just external stimuli. And every beautiful human experience is in there too, but we unfortunately we live in a hellish environment. So anyway, so all of the depth of my particular experience, I like to think about Chaucer for this too, where it's just like this is what, from the 1400s, late 1400s in English. And I don't know how to do the proper Chaucer pronunciations or anything, but when that April with his showers swoot, the drought of March hath pierced to the root, and bathed every vein in such liquor, of which virtue engendered is the flower. Like, you have to try to put yourself in his shoes this is a great opportunity to try to put yourself in his shoes, and reading the entirety of the book opens up that world to you. You can suddenly engage with all the possibility of experience that perhaps Chaucer had living in his own society that led him to write this, and see what he was trying to communicate. Anyway, I'm just trying to say that reading is complex. There's nothing simple about it. You can reduce it to be a simple and mechanical activity, but done right or appreciated properly, it has infinite potential and infinite interest, infinite humanity. All right. So, on that note, if you're reading some, well, here's another kind of like maybe you're just straight up depressed, you're doom scrolling, maybe you're addicted to drugs, maybe you're just fucked up. I don't know. Like many of us have been there. Like sometimes it just helps to read something over and over. Just read, whether it's a poem or just a few pages of a book or one sentence. Even one word can be a rewarding and meditative experience. Like there's so much, because it's never the same. You're processing your existence via this activity. So you might just be reading like you laughed at Tom both times he sang, over and over and over again. And yet, and I'm not recommending you do that for like 24 hours or anything, but I just think we would all be surprised by what would come about if we actually read that 10 more times than we ever thought we wanted to read it. So do it as many times as you can bear, and then do it 10 more times. Language just, it's in you. It gives you a mirror for thinking about what language actually is in your psychic architecture, in your existence. So anyway, another reading one is it helps when you're depressed because it helps at all times because it fills the mind with something else. And it's an opportunity to soak. It's like you're soaking in something else, and that something else may wind up being cleansing. Anyway, also, and on that note, don't read garbage. Just don't. There's so much garbage, and no hate to my fellow booksellers, but there's lots of books I would not sell, especially some of the new ones. So, especially most of the new ones, actually. So, yeah, some other random reading exercises are, I think it can be pretty interesting to read things backwards, and that might sound stupid, but I don't know. It just is like, you just start breaking your own language apart. You start thinking about the syntax of English differently. I feel like it is probably a good exercise to read English backwards if you're starting to learn German, because it suddenly you're recreating meaning out of a reversed syntax. So the word order's all screwed up, and that maybe like prepares you to to soak in like the German syntax instead. So I think that's kind of fun, especially if it's something you actually like. I recommend doing these with things you actually like, not just random shit. Also, reading out loud, I think, can be very helpful for understanding. It kind of highlights those moments where you're like, I actually don't know what this guy's talking about. So, and also from I don't know, an evolution of that I like is to read things out loud as fast as possible or as slow as possible. But that's sort of more of a vocal exercise. So depends on the person, I guess. But anyway, so that's all I'll say about reading today, because I want to get through a whole bunch of other stuff on this list. And a reminder, we're just kind of talking about reversing brain rot and things we can do that help us do that. Okay. Wow, I wrote way too much stuff here. I wonder if, well, maybe, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could probably go for a long time on this subject matter, but I'll probably just pick a few more and cut it off at some point. I won't get into all of this stuff, but okay, so one other thing that I think is helpful for avoiding doom scrolling or things like that is to think about, or to set, I don't know, just to commit yourself to certain things. So you may commit yourself to like turning your phone off before you go to bed and not turning it on for 2 hours after you've woken up, so that you can start facing the day without it, so that it doesn't start blurring your mind immediately after you wake up and you have to reckon with the day soberly. That, or this kind of fits with another thing I was thinking about. Sometimes it's just nice to have a change of environment, just to go for a walk. And I think going for a walk is even more useful in this specific context of reversing brain rot if you leave your phone at home and you're just like, okay, I'm going out, I have to do these errands, I'm going to leave my phone at home. I say this, I don't know if I sound crazy, but like I know most people don't ever leave their phone at home. I know some of us do, but so many people don't. And I mean, you'll notice when you actually do this a handful of times that you feel different on the walk when you do that, because you don't have the potential to check the phone. And so you literally don't. You may be good at not checking it, but the thoughts actually evolve when the opportunity is not even given to you. So, yeah. And I guess also with the commitment thing, I mentioned using timers, but I find timers pretty helpful for using tasks, or helpful for, like, maybe I'll just set a timer and be like, I can't use a phone for an hour. So I have like an actual alarm clock that I set timers on. And yeah, you can act accordingly. And so then, like, when that potential is totally foreclosed to you, you may find it easier to do the other tasks that you're avoiding. Anyway, I'm gonna skip ahead here. Yeah, someone in the chat says it's actually amazing to not take photos when you're out and see something and don't have your phone. Yeah, that is an interesting experience, especially if it's something you really want to take a photo of. It makes you reevaluate why you want to take a photo of it in the first place. Okay. So there, yeah, I'll just I'll cut to the chase here. So I have this one section at the end that I called or I said strategize intelligence, but think strategically about your intelligence and the intelligence of the people in your circle, and how you actually want to improve that over time and sustain it and build like a fortress of protection for living in this world where we're all being attacked by information. So there's two sides of this. One is just to learn relevant things, and that I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but I will just dwell on 2 or 3 useful things. One of which I've talked about already, which is learning all the geography of the world. I think is very helpful. There's like less than 250 countries. I mean, they get really small after a while, so it kind of doesn't matter so much, but no offense. But like, yeah, like we just live on one globe for our entire lives, and this has been the same globe that's existed for all of human history. It's like, why don't I know where everything is? Why don't I like know something about every country? And then once you know that, it makes it easier to go back and think about how empires evolved over time, how countries split over time. And I just think that is so essential if you are intellectually inclined at all. Like really just got to learn it. I'll put a link to Cetera in the description, which is like it's an app and a website, and it makes it really easy to learn and test yourself on geography, on countries and capitals and whatever else. But for the whole world, you can do countries and capitals, and I think that is helpful. All right. And okay, and the alternative version of that is get familiar with anatomy. This is something I mean, I'm better at it than I used to be. I used to be highly ignorant of my own human anatomy, but that's another thing similar to the globe. It's like we're on this one globe for our whole lives. Well, with human anatomy, we're in this one body for our whole lives, and we can learn a lot about generalized human anatomical concepts in the history or in the science books. And then we can also apply that to our own specific body and understanding our own body and our own idiosyncrasies as we grow old. I think that gives you a lot of control over your own health, gives you a lot of, I don't know, it's kind of just a nice feeling. It feels, you feel a little more secure. It feels a little less mysterious because it is, talk about complex processes like the the human body is just totally, it's kind of unfathomable what is creating us at every moment. Like our heart's beating constantly, we're breathing constantly. It is hard to comprehend, but at the very least you can start naming the parts and getting more and more into detail and understanding more deeply who you are at the physiological level. And then to understand who you are at the psychological level, I think it's actually very useful to explore theories of personality. And I don't think you should get too attached to any of these theories of personality, whether it's, well, here's a few books that I liked. Okay, so, and, okay, so I think when I first started trying to get into this, I've never been, or at least like my whole life, like when, especially when I was younger, I was like anti-astrology. And then there was a point where I was still anti-astrology, and yet I understood that there was value in having a vocabulary for exploring personality. And so I was like, well, I should have a computer read my birth chart or something, and then just use it as a dialectical tool where I can agree with it, I can disagree with it, but at the very least, it is making me get more precise at more. It is increasing the precision of my conceptualization of my own personality. And I think that that's helpful. And it's with a similar light that I recommend things like the Enneagram. It's not because I think this is true. It's not because I think this is the human personality system. It's more because it gave me vocabulary for understanding experiences that are highly personal and that I felt alone in, especially when I was depressed. So I wonder if there's a few things that maybe this isn't my original copy because it doesn't look like anything is annotated in here. But for example, like on this type, that is one of the ones that I had more of an affinity with, and I caution you against ever identifying with a type and saying, oh, I'm a type 5, or oh, I'm ENTP, or all this stuff. I think that identification can be pretty destructive and can make you more confused in the long run. But anyway, so one of these personality descriptions that I had an affinity with in here describes like certain, I don't know, warning signs when someone is getting, when one of these people is getting mentally sick or something. And it says increasing tendency to isolate themselves, chronic physical neglect, letting themselves go, chronic and severe insomnia, nightmares and sleep disorders, increasing eccentricity, loss of interest in social skills, refusing help or being hostile to it, distorted perceptions, hallucinations, talk of suicide. And not all of that is relevant to me, but it just like, it's helpful to, when you are feeling suicidal or something, it's helpful to see something like that. And so then this gives like childhood frameworks, or what's the term? Like, it gives a hypothetical structures of the childhood that may lead to this personality development. And I don't know, I find that useful. And another thing that was useful about this was just that it emphasized how I could neglect my body and live in my mind. And that is totally true for a lot of my life. I would just be sort of detached without even knowing it. And yeah, anyway, on a similar note, there's this other book by Theodore Millon, which is Disorders of Personality. Similarly, I would discourage people from saying that they have a personality disorder or that they there's I think there's just a slippery slope with these types of grammatical constructions for these types of concepts where you say, oh, I have BPD, or oh, I'm a type 5. I mean, I don't even resonate with BPD. I'm speaking hypothetically, but like yeah, I think we should use the tools to develop our vocabulary, to develop our conceptual framework for understanding personality, and take it from there. Take what you can and use it in your life to improve your life and improve what you're able to do, overcome the things that are holding you back. So this book I found useful specifically because Millon breaks all of the standard personality disorders, histrionic, avoidant, whatever, into subtypes and explores just like varieties that get increasingly specific. So I think that is helpful when you are looking at it to understand yourself, or use it as a dialectical tool, as I described with astrology, where you're like, well, that seems right, and I can explore why, and that seems wrong. Hang on a second here. What's going on with my... Just got a warning on my encoding or something. Anyway. Yeah, so maybe I can give an example here. Oh, well, I'll leave it. And then I haven't read this book. I just read little sections of it, but a friend of mine who is one of my, I feel like he understands personality better than any of my other friends. That's his intellectual niche. Recommended this book, and I've just read little bits of it. I haven't really gotten into it yet because it's just not what I've been on. So, all right, and one more little note about that before we move on is from this book that I haven't read yet, but I read the last chapter the other day, and it said something relevant. It's a book about Jung, written by a Catholic priest, I think, called Individuation, and I look forward to reading it, but for now I just have from the end. Jung himself gives every beginner this advice, quote, "Learn your theories as well as you can, but leave them on one side when you meet the miracle of the living soul. The all-important thing is your own creative personality, not mere theory." So that's like what I'm saying there. And yeah, and then one more little bit from here. For most modern men and women, religious decisions can no longer be attained by communal experience or tradition. They must take place in the solitude of self-discovery. Jung's work shows that religion is closely connected with individuation. The process of individuation heightens a man's ability to live a religious life. From the Christian standpoint, it may be said that individuation serves the realization of faith. The religious problem of many people is that they would like to believe, but cannot conceive faith as a reality. They feel that their attitude to religion is unauthentic, provisional, that it has not evolved from the core of their personality. No pastoral effort that is based merely on theological doctrine can help them overcome their difficulty, since such people lack the capacity to respond to a purely theological approach. Their spiritual life is undeveloped. In this context, Jung is quite right. God himself cannot thrive in a humanity that is psychically undernourished. And that is what our society predisposes us to, is to be undernourished in that regard. Sorry, I just keep getting this. I hope the video looks fine. I've just never noticed this error message before. All right. So one last thing here. That was kind of like the learning relevant things, just increase your knowledge generally. And I'm barely talking about that because the world is so complex. We can all learn so much. And where the rubber hits the road is getting that information to work for you in the social environment that we live in. And I think we do have to urge each other to steadfastness, urge each other to the truth, urge each other to work on our understanding of the situation and work on the work that we're going to do about it. So with this regard, I'm going to go to, I'm going to bring up old Ben Franklin here. And he had this group that he called the Junto. And I don't know a whole lot about Ben Franklin. I don't even know a whole lot about the Junto. But his Junto, I don't know the etymology of that word or anything. His Junto was... I mean, it was, well, actually, I think he defines it here. One moment. Yes. So in the fall of 1727, Franklin, quote, formed most of my ingenious acquaintances into a club for mutual improvement, which we called the Junto. You should do this. Everyone should make a Junto. Everyone needs their most ingenious acquaintances assembled into a club for mutual self-improvement, I think. And yeah, so I'll read a little bit of this. I actually haven't read this section, but then I'll read some queries that were brought to the Junto. So the rules I drew up, Franklin continued in his autobiography, required that every member in his turn should produce one or more queries on any point of morals, politics, or natural philosophy to be discussed by the company, and once in 3 months pronounce and read an essay of his own writing on any subject he pleased. This sounds great to me. And some of the queries are just wonderful. So I will read you a few of those. I just want to make sure I get the one that I like the most in here. Sorry, one of these is just really stands above the rest to me personally. Oh yeah, all right, so we got it. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of queries in here. I don't know if some of these are things they would read every meeting, or if some of these are something. So here's proposals and queries to be asked the Junto. Sorry, this is organized a little weird. Queries to be asked the Junto. Oh yeah, this one's my favorite, all right? Whence comes the dew that stands on the outside of a tankard that has cold water in it in the summertime? Just like, because, you know, it's like what year is it at this point? Like 1730 something? They're just trying to, yeah, 1732. They're trying to figure out how condensation works. Whence comes the dew that stands on the outside of a tankard that has cold water in it in the summertime? Great question. And then some of the other ones are like, have you met with anything in the author you last read, remarkable or suitable to be communicated to the Junto, particularly in history, morality, poetry, physic, travels, mechanic arts, or other parts of knowledge? Or, what new story have you lately heard, agreeable for telling in conversation? Hath any citizen in your knowledge failed in his business lately, and what have you heard of the cause? Have you lately heard of any citizens thriving well, and by what means? Have you lately heard how any present rich man, here or elsewhere, got his estate? Do you know of any fellow citizen who has lately done a worthy action, deserving praise and imitation, or who has committed an error proper for us to be warned against and avoid? I think these are ones they would read every Junto meeting. What unhappy effects of intemperance have you lately observed or heard, of imprudence, of passion, or of any other vice or folly? What happy effects of temperance, of prudence, of moderation, or of any other virtue? Have you or any of your acquaintances been lately sick or wounded? If so, what remedies were used and what were their effects? Who do you know that are shortly going voyages or journeys, if one should have occasion to send by them? Do you think of anything at present in which the Junto may be serviceable to mankind, to their country, to their friends, or to themselves? Hath any deserving stranger arrived in town since last meeting that you heard of? And what have you heard or observed of his character or merits? And whether, think you, it lies in the power of the Junto to oblige him or encourage him as he deserves? Anyway, there's lots of good stuff. Another one is, does the importation of servants increase or advance the wealth of our country? That is a relevant question today. Would not an office of insurance for servants be of service, and what methods are proper for the erecting such an office? Oh, this is a good one. Just a question at the Junto meeting this week. Can a man arrive at perfection in this life, as some believe, or is it impossible, as others believe? Nice. Yeah, so basically start a Junto, and I will be starting a Junto if you're local, but I did not get a haircut, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. I think it's just looks different. Yep. Okay, so, and there's answers to some of these. So on the perfection one, perfection in this life, is it possible or impossible? Perhaps they differ in the meaning of the word perfection. I suppose the perfection of anything to be only the greatest the nature of that thing is capable of. Different things have different degrees of perfection, and the same thing at different times. Thus, a horse is more perfect than an oyster, yet the oyster may be a perfect oyster, as well as the horse a perfect horse. And an egg is not so perfect as a chicken, nor a chicken as a hen, for the hen has more strength than the chicken, and the chicken more life than the egg. Yet it may be yet it may be a perfect egg, chicken, and hen. If they mean a man cannot in this life be so perfect as an angel, it may be true. For an angel, by being incorporeal, is allowed some perfections we are at present incapable of, and less liable to some imperfections that we are liable to. If they mean a man is not capable of being so perfect here as he is capable of being in heaven, that may be true likewise. But that a man is not capable of being so perfect here as he is capable of being here is not sense. It is as if I should say a chicken in the state of a chicken is not capable of being so perfect as a chicken is capable of being in that state. That does make sense. I don't know it's much easier to read a sentence like that than it is to hear it, I think. In the above sense, if there may be a perfect oyster, a perfect horse, a perfect ship, why not a perfect man? That is as perfect as his present nature and circumstances admit. Anyway, great questions at the Junto. This is what the mind is for. Yeah. And yeah, so we got to start using the mind like that. Another question, wherein consists the happiness of a rational creature? Answer, in having a sound mind and a healthy body, a sufficiency of the necessaries and conveniences of life, together with the favor of God and the love of mankind. What do you mean by a sound mind? A faculty of reasoning justly and truly in searching after and discovering such truths as relate to my happiness, which faculty is the gift of God, capable of being improved by experience and instruction into wisdom. What is wisdom? The knowledge of what will be best for us on all occasions, and of the best ways of attaining it. Is any man wise at all times, and in all things? No, but some are much more frequently wise than others. That's true. What do you mean by the necessaries of life? Having wholesome food and drink, wherewith to satiate hunger and thirst, clothing and a place of habitation fit to secure against the inclemencies of the weather. What do you mean by the conveniencies of life? Such a plenty uncompleted. So anyway, start a Junto. We're starting a Junto. It's 2026. We're all starting Juntos because that's the only way. Anyway, yeah, there are like I think if you're in college or if you're an intellectual person, like you and your friends should be asking each other literally the hardest questions, and you shouldn't be mad at each other. You shouldn't be arguing vitriolically or anything. But like find the places you disagree the most, and that's like start exploring that. Start exploring why. Start seeing if you can bridge the gap through reasoning and understanding to see what to try to find some truth in the world. I think something that is highly relevant in the present society is like what would a just immigration policy look like in the United States? I think that's what people should be arguing about, but in an actual argument, not in a sloganeering, like retarded type way, just in a way where you're actually like you're like you've got the pen out, you've got like pen and paper, you're like what literally what would this look like what would a just and reasonable and positive immigration policy look like in the nation, and then also how do you enforce it, blah 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 blah. It's like don't just get caught up in the news cycle shit. Like start actually thinking, start using your mind for what you were given your mind for. Oh man. Anyway, so all kinds of shit. I mean, and personal questions too. They're like we should be asking questions about politics and the nation, but also or like, you know, what is a citizen? What does it mean to be a citizen in the 21st century? How does it relate to states of exception, to police state and control issues? Anyway, what do we got? But then, you know, also you can also make it positive. You can be like, well, where am I failing in my life? What things are really bothering me? Like these are all, let's start getting comfortable putting all this stuff out on the table for the people that we trust to be moving ahead with in our lives. Another thing is like who are you going to know if you live for 40 more years? Like who do you want to be with you? I assume some of the people you know you have already met in your life you would like to know in 40 years. And those are the people that we should be really trying to stick together with and figure things out with. Anyway, and also I think another I don't know, another parallel there is like I think it's useful to try to make predictions and assess the reasonableness of those predictions with other people, thinking about like what's the US going to look like in 2030? Like what's my life going to look like a year from now? Just try to like actually try to make predictions seriously, as if you're actually really trying, as if it actually really matters, as if it actually could be useful. So what oh yo, hey Siri. Anyway, so well, I mean I'm probably about to log off because that's most of what I don't know. I mean, I had a whole bunch of other stuff, but I think that makes for a better overall monologue. Did you hear the Junto part, Siri? I feel like you would be into that. All right. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, and try some of this shit out. This, I mean, pardon the language, but try this stuff out this week, because I will not be doing shows until Monday. I'm out of town. I'm going to New York. If any of my friends want to see me, I'll be there. Unfortunately, going back to the Big Apple once again. So yeah, all right. Well, everybody have a great night, and like the video, subscribe. I wonder if I broke 100 subscribers here. Let's see. I'll check it out. Let me see here. But yeah, tell your friends. I will continue doing this indefinitely. until the work is done. Yep, we got 100 subscribers, so W in the chat. W's in the chat. All right. Everybody, yeah, thanks for tuning in. And I guess, yeah, Monday at 9, I'll be back for 4 shows next week, as far as I am aware. All right. Have a great night. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Do leave a... Actually, I might throw a whole bunch of this stuff in the comments so that it's more usable as a reference. Because I basically just gave us a whole bunch of like things to try and things to do. And yeah, unless you were taking notes, some of that's just passing by. So I'll pin a comment or put it in the description or something. Yeah, have a great night. See ya.